Previously on the SoJo files.
Jordan's story better than me. I was sitting right next to it.
What was it you were telling me this morning, though?
And I always felt guilty. Like, even though I kind of knew something was wrong, I still feline toward that pill. That's what I was telling you. I didn't.
Oh, you already knew about the baby.
No, I didn't know at that point that she was dead. A part of me was like, she's okay. A part of me was like, no, she's not. She wasn't okay. And I still V-lined for the bathroom like it was no thing.
Really? Because you always think that they think, they're...
So I called him whenever I heard Peyton. I did it myself. I'm not going to not tell you. When Olivia fell that one time, I called Jose myself, crying, sending him pictures, asking him for a bed. Motherfucker. I kind of blame him. I kind of blame Jose.
You do? You blame Jose?
I do. A part of me does.
Really? Why?
I mean, he wasn't there. He didn't do anything, but I begged him to get a bed.
This week on the SoJo files, we are going to be comparing and contrasting Jordan Shreeve and Eva Millard's interrogations. And who better to compare and contrast those interrogations with than my two co-hosts for season 2, who also happen to be two of Jordan's defense attorneys.
This is Chad Atwell, and I'm proud to have been one of the lawyers that defended Jordan Shreeve.
This is Chris Carwile, and I'm proud to have worked with Chad Atwell defending Jordan Shreeve.
Chris came onto this case after it had been in his firm for a while, and Chris's sister. Evidently, I don't think Oklahoma in general, but the Carwile family, good lawyers from what I met. Pretty impressive.
It was good to have my older sister, Laura, willing to jump in, and her firm willing to let her work on it, and Chad being so open to having her work on it and to letting me work on it, because he had just hired me. He didn't know a lot about me. I was walking through the office one day, and I saw the Shreeve murder file, and I asked him if I could take a look at it. And he said, yeah, man, have it, and let me know what you think. And it's interesting because it kind of ties back to her interview, because I read the initial reports, and I thought, it could have been her, it could have been Jordan. I think it reads more like it was her, but it doesn't necessarily exonerate him. And then you watch the interviews, and you're like, no, it was absolutely Eva. There's no chance Jordan did it. It was 100% Eva. From that point on, I was 100% Team Jordan. He didn't do it. They're going to send an innocent man to prison. So at some point,
Clearly, he had a lot of faith in me.
we asked my sister for help too, just to be sure, because I figured, you can never have too many smart people looking at it, and I knew Chad was smart. I didn't know if I was helping that much, so I figured it could have helped at the third one. And I don't know. It's everyone who's looked at it, her included, and everyone who's looked at it has come back and said within 5 minutes, yeah, it's very obviously her.
Yeah. And then, so let's get it going. I think one of the important things to keep in mind is that Jordan didn't have a story of the day of what happened to Olivia because he wasn't there. The genesis for everything that unfolded came from Eva Millard.
Eva was already changing her version of events by the time that first responders arrived on the scene. Eva told Jordan, or Eva staged it to where when Jordan came home, she would find Olivia in the pack and play. However, we know for a fact that Eva changed her story by the time first responders and police arrived on the scene, and we know that to be true because we have copies of the Van Buren Police Department incident reports from that day. Officer Wooten, who was the second person to arrive on scene that day, wrote in his incident report, and I quote, "She stated that she thought she must have crawled out of the playpen where she sleeps and hit her head. She reiterated several times that the child had a history of climbing out of the playpen." That version of Eva's story was reiterated in Officer DeCrew's incident report. Officer DeCrew, who was the first officer to arrive on scene that day, put in his report, and I quote, "I heard the mother saying something about she thought she must have tried to climb out of her bassinet / pack and play that was at the foot of the bed and fallen out."
And then her story changes again when she's being interviewed by Detective Perry, because at some point during that interview, it just becomes accepted that Eva found Olivia in the pack and play, not out of the pack and play, which again is just a subtle change in her story that somehow detectives don't pick up on or follow up on.
Don't forget that there's also this idea about a broken neck, which only ever came from Eva. That entire thing came from Eva. Her neck must be broken, which we know from the reports was said to the first people on the scene.
We know that the broken neck narrative was stated continuously throughout both interrogations.
I'm telling you, there's no way you slept through that little girl getting her neck broke like that. You know, her neck was broke. Nobody seems to know. And this poor little girl's neck's broke because that baby just didn't snap a neck. And we already know that her neck was broken.
I knew that just by holding her.
Huh?
I knew that just by holding her. What do you already believe?
That her neck is broken.
You hear them mention and repeat the broken neck again and again, even though there was no proof or indication of a broken neck. And of course, now we know for a fact there actually wasn't.
She is the only source of information for what happened before anybody got on the scene. What she's telling detectives in her interview is what they're taking as the truth about what happened. Looking back on it, we know that she's lying about certain things. For a fact, she's saying things that are not true. And Jordan's just saying, I don't know. And they're taking Eva at her word when they really should not be doing that.
Which is, again, ironic since they were able to corroborate what Jordan gave them about his day. Times, places, locations, people, where he was at, what he did, what he saw, all of those things. They had those. There was this circular portion where they found Olivia. Eva is there, and that her neck is broken. Eva said that she fell into the pack and play, or that she must have crawled out of the pack and play. Eva said that. Jordan never said that, but he gets credited, or
her story becomes their story.
That's
somehow
right.
What she says becomes what both of them said happened. And that's not at all how it went down. Jordan, 100% from the beginning, said, I don't know what happened to Olivia. And Eva was the one who offered up all these different explanations about how it could have occurred.
And gave up hypotheticals. Maybe it could have been this. Perhaps it could have been that. She continued at every turn for there to need to be an answer, I think, which is amazing considering how little she was pressed. I think it would be accurate to run these interrogations, if you want to call them that, these videos, by retired credentialed detectives, because I wouldn't even call what happened in the interview room at the Vanderbilt Police Department with Eva Millard on that day. I wouldn't call it a custodial interrogation, or I wouldn't call it an interrogation. I wouldn't call it a forensic interview. I wouldn't call it a search for the truth. I wouldn't call it fact finding. I would call it, a charade is what I would call it. It was words that don't line up that were set on video and they have audio attached to them. And I think you have to remember that I took a trip down there and I wanted to see the room because I think that's important. And it's a large, wide open room, and it's set up for modular cubicles. And when I say it's a CID, that portion of the larger Buren Police Department. And so it's wide open, except for, my memory is 3 interview rooms that are all 1, 2, 3, right when you walk into the larger room, and they'd be on your left. Unless my memory is off, which is possible. It's been a while back, but it means that they could have left a room in the middle so that they couldn't hear each other, because the search is for the killer of Olivia SoJo. You don't want anybody to be able to pick up on facts they might not be privy to because you're trying to question them about, whether it be Jordan or Mr. James Shreeve or Eva. Or at this point, you have to understand that everybody else is in play. These people live there. One of them must have killed Olivia because they lived there is just simply a fallacy. So a detective or a curious person then would want to ask about third parties or visitors. And so everybody in the world is a suspect. You narrow it down pretty quickly, but they put them in rooms that were adjoining. Eva very clearly trying to hear what's going on in the other room. The multiple ways that they asked Jordan how he hurt her. Was it an accident? Was it this? Was it that? Could it have been this? Could it have been that? Could you maybe explain it to us? And he continually said the truth and his truth, which is, I don't know. I can only tell you what I know. and I wasn't there from here to here. And the last time I saw her was this time, and she was fine. They didn't do that sequence of questions with Eva Millard at all.
No.
Eva, could you imagine as a mother how you get frustrated and maybe something you didn't intend to have an outcome like this could have led there? Could you imagine? I mean, if you were sleep deprived or if you were in withdrawals, as a father, I know that is frustrating, right? Are your kid not sleeping? You need to get to work tomorrow. There are bills to pay. I mean, the world's pressures mount up on you. And so it's really disappointing that there are no questions like that in Eva Millard's interview. If you had heard her, it would have been, we believe, no doubt, to be an accident. So just go ahead and tell us. They didn't ask her once if she hurt Olivia. They didn't even ask her after she wanted to know on the day that her 2-year-old died what the, quote, core temperature, end quote, was.
Can you go back to the core temperature?
Father of multiple children who showed her a photograph in her interview room. That man didn't even follow up with a question that he was inspired by, because he thought, why is this girl asking what a core body temperature is?
One thing to note and keep in mind is that temperature was said by Detective Perry 3 times throughout Eva's interrogation prior to her asking what the core temp was.
And they're taking her temperature, which will give us an idea of what time she died. Okay, her body temperature is this. The normal body temperature is this. It goes down this much an hour.
Perry mentions a temperature, but he leaves it vague. We're going to get this temperature. This temperature is going to help us try to pinpoint the time of death, but he just says in a non-specific way, temperature. Eva Millard is the first and only one to use that specific terminology, core temp.
Can you go back to the core temperature?
100% that. Everybody's going to figure it out, and Chris figured it out super, super early, because he's a smart one, that Chris Carwile. But
I like to think of that picture.
But, in this business, words have extreme, annoying meaning. And my wife will tell you that, I assure you. But the fact that she used one of the medically accepted and accurate phrases, which is a measurement that would be very instrumental in trying to approximate or calculate the actual time of this injury, again, which would have been the same as death, that she's the first one to use it.
And it's such a specific and unique term for someone who does not work in law enforcement or criminal justice or legal or medical to just casually throw out there. And for all of the listeners who watched the interrogation tapes on our YouTube channel, he's trying to show her these pictures and she snatches the phone out of his hand and is flipping through them. And it's all just a very weird interaction between the two of them.
And she scrolls past 2 pictures of Olivia and then goes to the one with the core body temp and zooms in. And it's just that, I think it's another good example of how she is behaving oddly. If you're a detective, you should pick up on her behaving weirdly during this interview. She's trying to get information from you so that she can fix her story to that info, whereas Jordan is just trying to answer questions. He's not asking a lot of questions. He's saying, I don't know. I'll tell you what I know. Check my phone, check the videos, talk to so-and-so. And Eva is asking what happened to her. What was the core body temperature? Just different questions to the detectives, trying to get information from them so that she, in my opinion, so that she can adapt her story based on the information so that she doesn't get caught up in something. One of the things detectives do is asking questions they know the answer to just to see if you'll lie to them about something. And she doesn't want that to happen to her. And it does happen to her once or twice where they ask her early on, do you use drugs? And she says, no.
Does the pills make it worse?
I wasn't on pills last night, to be honest with you. I haven't had any.
And then she hears Jordan say through the wall, talks about his drug use. And then later on, they ask her about it. And she says, yeah, we use drugs.
The only thing I ever lied to you about, and I didn't tell you about, was the pills. See?
Because she knows that she's going to be caught in a lie. She has to avoid that.
I think she was remarkably effective in eliciting information from the various officers who came in our interview room that day. You're spot on, and we did this many sleepless nights, but how much information she was able to obtain And then another officer would come in and give it the old college try, so to speak. And then she would incorporate that information into how she explained whatever it was that they were asking. And I mean, look, it's happened in every case that I've ever had. The cops are going to lie to you. Now, let's be super clear. They're not violating your rights by lying to you. But when they tell you, if you'll just confess, it's going to be okay, it's not. It's not. It's just, we all know that it's not going to be okay. That is a tool that the police are allowed to use, and this will shock a lot of people, that I'm 100% okay with. They didn't even try that hard to lie to Eva to get her to make a misstatement or anything else along those lines.
And in stark contrast to Eva's interrogation is Jordan's interrogation. He never, no matter how many times he was asked the same questions, no matter how many different ways they tried to ask those same questions, never wavered on his version of events. Even when they told him that he failed the voice stress test.
Why are you doing the air quotes?
I have anger about this jump science logic test.
But he says, I don't care what that thing said. I'm telling you the truth.
That's fine. You, not even close to trusting.
I don't care what that machine says. I'm telling you the honest truth. I swear.
And it turns out they're lying to him, and he passed.
Right.
Even though it's a joke bullshit test, he's saying, I don't care what you're telling me that says. I know I passed. And it turns out, once again, Jordan Shreeve is the only one telling the truth. He passed that test.
Have y'all ever, in any of your other cases, seen officers take the computer from one suspect's room, the computer that one suspect took this quote-unquote lie detector test on, take that computer into the other suspect's room and show them the computer and the test results and talk to them about what the other suspect allegedly passed and failed questions on? Ever, in any case?
Y'all are just telling me that to go against him.
Nope. In fact, I can go get that computer and bring it in here and show you. Hang on. Let me show you. All right. This is the test that Jordan took. All right. And so what we want to see when there's a truth is this right here. It looks like a Christmas tree. It's going to be the same thing when you take this. All right. What we want to see if there's a lie is, see how this is wide like that? That is the stress of a lie. All right? This is truthful. That's the stress of a lie. You can kind of see the difference?
What was those questions?
Okay, well, let me see. I did not actually, somebody else gave him this test. That question is, did you see Olivia get killed? And he answered no, and that says that he lied. This one is, did you kill Olivia? And he answered no, and that says that he lied.
What was the second question?
Which one? This one?
This one.
Oh, okay. So, this one is the color of the wall gray. He said no. What this is called a control question.
Oh, you
So
just
we asked him
stepped
to
that
lie.
out. Yes.
And I'm going to ask you to lie about some questions. And so that's a known lie. So that's why that one is a lie.
Okay, so
No. And in fact, that is the only time in my professional career. And as a defense lawyer, you can imagine a lot of times we hire experts to line up with what the state may have used or might use or that particular county uses. I don't know of anyone else who uses voice stress tests. And so I had never seen them before. I think that they are comical. Jordan was asked to take one. And to your point, SoJo, he took it without hesitation, whatever I can do. Let's not forget, back up real quick. When Jordan pulled up to Granite Circle, he was a free man. He left his truck running. He was invited to take a ride to the Van Buren Police Department when he pulled up. And he said, sure, here's my phone. I'll leave it in the truck. And he got in the car and he left. He did everything that was asked of him. And every time, what I haven't seen before is usually about the third or fourth one of these things. Let's take a friendly ride. First stab at lying to someone that is innocent. Usually about the second or third, it just backfires and the person shuts down. They're done. There's only a stick and there's no carrot, right? And I get that. Jordan was willing to stay there as long as it took and do anything asked of him without question. And let's not forget in the interrogation too that they come in and they ask him about his cell phone again. He's like, yeah, you have my phone. There's not a password on it. You can get in there and get whatever you need.
I would never.
Look, rule one, forensic interviewers will tell you this. Law enforcement will tell you this. If you find yourself in an interrogation room or you think even remotely that you are the suspect of a crime, you do not speak to the police.
Yeah, I wouldn't go down to the police station. 100% innocent, you know you didn't do it. I'm not going down to talk to anybody until I've consulted with a lawyer.
Lots of people made comments about why he talked to police, why was he in there so long, and answering questions and letting them have access to his car and his phone. But there's this big misconception, and it's very common, that innocent people don't believe that they have anything to hide or anything to fear in speaking with police, and so they do that, when in all actuality, it's actually not safe, even for an innocent person, to just speak to police without legal counsel and representation with them. A perfect example of that is Jordan is there at the police station at his own free will, as a free man, not being detained. He can go smoke a cigarette whenever he wants to. He can stop answering questions and leave whenever he wants to. And he has every right to call his mother whenever he wants to, which he asked to do several times.
I just want to go smoke. I need to call my mom, let her know what's going on, because she does I was on the phone with her, and I'm supposed to call her when I got home. He just asked me to let me call my mom because she wanted me to call her,
and he was denied the ability to do that. Meanwhile, in the next room, they're like, here, Eva, here's your personal cell phone to call your mother on. It's clear to me that they were denying him access to a phone call, which he had every right to make, for a very strategic reason.
They give him no credit for any of the good stuff that he does. They give him no credit for being honest. They just write it off as kind of like a neutral. If you're doing like tallies for and against him, they just don't write a tally down in bad whenever he's honest. But they never are like, and he's an honest person. If he gave the interview she gave, if he started his interview with, do I need a lawyer? I didn't do anything wrong.
I haven't done anything wrong.
No, okay. We just got to get your side of what happened. We're just trying to figure it out, okay?
Do I need a lawyer? I need to know, am I in trouble? Because I haven't done
If you haven't done anything wrong, you're definitely not in trouble, okay?
They would have held that against him. If he lied to them more and more, gave conflicting stories, they'd hold it against him. He is an honest person who does everything that he thinks he should do because he wants to help figure out what happened to Olivia. And he thinks at the end of the day, everyone will see he's just trying to help. He doesn't know anything. And hopefully he can help figure out what happened. And instead, he's just blind to the fact that they're never going to entertain the fact that he didn't do it.
They are constantly trying to catch him in a lie that he's not telling, but don't bother to ever call Eva out on the lies that they know she is telling.
If anything, they avoid calling her out when they can kind of see her telling a bigger lie or digging herself into a hole that she can't get out of. It's almost like the detectives ask her questions or change the subjects to a point to avoid her telling them another lie. They're trying to actively prevent themselves from catching her in a lie.
One example of that is when they ask her early on if she's ever been investigated before, and that is a really weird question to ask someone, not only that early in an investigation, but someone who you presumably think is a secondary victim because you're treating her not as a suspect, but as a victim. And she gives this wild answer, and there is no follow-up. Just, that's it.
It's just the yes and why is something about some investigation regarding armed kids. So you're investigating the death of a 2-year-old, and one of the adults involved has previous investigations with kids, and you don't. If you're a competent detective, you're spending at least an hour or 2 hours discussing just that with her and getting everything you can about that from her and trying to figure out what it is.
And let's pretend that this was 100 years ago without the quick electronic access that we have, right? The moment that her response is not, what in the hell are you talking about? I have never harmed a child or one of my children. The moment that her response is anything short of that, well, your next 2 hours are mapped out for you as a detective. She didn't say no. Have you ever
We're
done
talking
anything
about
like this. Have you ever harmed a child? She didn't say no. There's her next 2 hours of questions as a detective.
Like you said, she deflects. And instead of just answering the question, she gives this very detailed, very distracting, and highly elaborate answer, which I believe is very strategic on her part to distract and deflect from the answer she should be giving.
Have you ever been investigated for anything before?
Yeah.
What for?
Eric and his family when I'd gotten out of prison. When I was a little girl, about 7 months old, whenever I was 4 or 5, my mom used to sell me for dope, and I'd be raped a lot. Well, when we were going through the custody battle or whatever, they tried to say that people who have been raped when they're younger grow up to rape their kids. It wasn't true. It was a slam shut case. I was at work when I got the phone call from DHS, and I literally was having a miscarriage when I was on my way. I had to walk 5 miles to the DHS office, and my mom showed up there, and we talked to him, and it was true. I've never hurt any of my girls. I mean, if anything, the stuff that happened to me when I was a little girl, that really, I try to protect them. I never let them wear just panties anywhere or anything, because you never truly know somebody. And I always tell Jordan that. You never truly know anyone.
Right.
When she brings up that she was adopted.
You know, and then after I was adopted, my mom's husband of 20 years started raping me as well whenever I was about 10 or 11. And she was the one that taught me that.
She just tries to change the subject to anything that's not the bad thing that she accidentally just said.
She doesn't try. She is allowed to. Look, in the same vein, some people will think if you didn't do anything, you should just speak to police. Well, they'll change their tune the day that they are wrongfully accused. Candidly, they'll change the tune the day they're rightfully accused. Still don't talk to police, but that's a choice that detectives made because neither of them said, I'm leaving. Now, Eva didn't say that, and Jordan didn't say that. Okay? I think that's fair to point out if we're going to point these things out. But also, why did the detective ask that question? And what knowledge did he have on that day when he asked that question and then let it go like Elsa?
Given how they treated Eva throughout the entirety of her interrogation, the question just seems totally out of left field. What did they know? What did they overhear? What were they told that made them ask that question in the first place, which contradicts how they have been treating her throughout the interrogation and how they continued to treat her throughout the interrogation? And there's just no follow-up. She gives that elaborate, distracting answer, and that's just all she wrote. That's it. The end.
What if Jordan Shreeve had said yes to that question? They would have spent 6 hours following up with him. If they had said, do you have any history of doing this to kids? And he had said, yeah, but, or anything, like Chad said, anything other than hell no. They'd have dug in and followed up. They might have put handcuffs on him right then. And they just don't follow up with her at all.
And one of the massive problems with that, for me, again, as one of the people who will scrutinize the words as closely as anybody, is understand this. When the interviewer, was that Detective Perry at the time?
Yes, it was Perry, for sure.
Have you ever done something like this before? And she gave an answer, paraphrasing, that is a yes.
It's not paraphrasing.
It's a yes.
Detective Perry, have you ever been investigated for anything before? Eva Millard, yeah.
I've never hit my kids, never.
Have you ever been investigated for anything before?
Yeah.
What for?
If you're talking about this, and someone asks you, if you're talking about the death of a 2-year-old, you're brought down to the station because your 2-year-old died, and they're asking you about that, and the cop asks you, have you ever been investigated for anything before? He's not asking you if you drove drunk or if you 10 years ago,
Right.
arrested for possession of drug paraphernalia. He's asking you, have you ever been investigated for something like this before? And if you say yeah, that should be a very big red flag. If you don't say, what are you talking, even that would be better. What are you talking about? What specifically are you talking about? Because yeah, I have a drug arrest from 10 years ago, but I don't think that's what you mean. But instead she says, yeah.
Look, there are reports that would summarize that though as they confess to the crime. It's like the famous trick question of, when did you stop beating your wife? You can't answer that question because it assumes that you beat your wife.
If you don't have the response of absolute shock and utter disgust with a hell no,
Right.
any other response is a bad look.
Is an admission of guilt is what state prosecutors would call that, an admission of guilt. Have you ever committed a crime like this before?
If Jordan said it, they'd call it a confession.
And they would call it an admission of guilt, and they would have highlighted it, and they would put it on loop.
What is y'all's opinion on why Detective Perry told Eva that Jordan didn't know anything about the wipes that were found in the kitchen trash?
They were from yesterday morning because he showed them to me yesterday morning.
He didn't know nothing about them, he said.
That's funny because he showed them to me and he said it's puke. He cleaned up her puke.
I'm just telling you. I asked him about them. He said he didn't know nothing about them. So if he knew something about them and showed them to you, then why would he tell me he didn't know nothing about them? Because we analyzed them and they're not puke, it's blood. It's 100% blood.
Can you show me?
I ask because we know for a fact that Jordan did tell Perry that he knew about the wipes and that he had cleaned up Olivia's throw up the night before. We know that for a fact.
In the trash can.
Not that I recollect. I cleaned some throw up that was black. It looked like black. Otherwise, he's
100% not
blood.
No, it's blood. It's 100% blood.
Oh, that's the dark black stuff.
It's not black. It's blood.
Oh, this was black. What I cleaned up.
And this is on wipes that are still wet from today.
That doesn't make sense.
I guess I just missed the memo with that line of questioning because Jordan very clearly admits that he knew about a wipe in the trash can and that he had cleaned up puke the night before. Obviously, Perry is claiming it to be a bloody wipe, not saying it did or didn't look that way, but it hadn't been sent off to serology testing, and there's nothing to indicate that they had done luminol testing on it to prove the presence of blood. So I just don't get where he was going with that line of questioning, because Jordan has admitted to cleaning up throw up the night before and does not know anything about a bloody wipe, and even throws out there that maybe Eva was cleaning something up. So would it not make more sense to go into Eva's room and confront her and say, Jordan admits that he cleaned up throw up, but he has no idea what a bloody wipe would be doing in the trash can, and even went so far as to say that perhaps you were cleaning something up before we got there. Do you care to explain the bloody wipe in the trash can? Because that line of questioning would make sense. That line of questioning would push her into a corner and demand a response.
Can I still say that the whole thing was a charade? I don't know. Look, best guess is it was real obvious who knew something about the 2-year-old's life and who was a caregiver and who knew details.
When they asked Eva about, they said, describe Olivia, Eva's response is, she's a kid.
She's a kid.
She likes to play.
She likes to play.
I was like, what a bullshit response.
Yeah, I mean, not to be cruel, but it's like Eva's just describing like a pet to her. Like she's a kid. She likes to play.
So, tell me a little bit about Olivia.
They did.
Yeah. What's she like to do?
It seemed like Daniel Perry and every other interviewer who took any sort of actual length in the room, there were either things that were off limits or there were places they weren't willing to go. But I mean, you can only lead a horse so far. She also wasn't picking up the bait to say that Jordan had the capacity to even harm a child.
I think she had plan A, which was, I'm going to pitch this whole thing as a horrible accident. We're both walking out of here. Nothing's going to happen. But just in case plan A doesn't work out, I'm going to say enough to try to implicate Jordan without outright implicating him. That way I've not trashed plan A, but I've set up plan B if needed. She was playing both sides of the fence.
She had multiple plans to just anything she needed to do to put to you, Jordan, Jim, anybody. she was ready, and you can see towards the end of the interview, she understood that they were not going to buy that this was an accident, that somebody was going to be arrested for this, and she understood it was going to be her or Jordan.
I've had parents sit right there and tell me the same thing.
But I'm not those parents.
Oh no, I'm not saying you are. I'm not saying you're the one that did it. But either you or him did it.
My God.
Either you or him. Which one was it?
It was me.
It was you or him.
It would never hurt my baby.
You or him.
She made a decision that it was not going to be her.
But let's talk about that. That's a great point in that Eva Millard didn't move on from Eva's plan until Eva chose to, right? She knew when it had ran its course and when it had. We saw the first example of that when, well, you couldn't have found her in the crib if she fell out. Do you understand that? All of whatever happened before we go on camera that morning at the house, then all that changed. She didn't ever need to hit plan C in the interview room. Officers at one point, for whatever their reasons were, took a stab at that too. They first go in and they see Jordan, and then they talk to him about his father, who was pretty frail at the time, who was elderly, undergoing dialysis. And they started asking very leading questions about James Shreeve and his capacity for anger, and whether he was ever basically mean to kids, and how was he with Olivia. Jordan never said, oh, yeah, I mean, Dad's super angry, and he wouldn't allow that to happen because it wasn't the truth. Eva also didn't take that bait. She was never pressed on whatever involvement she had, if any, if she was even there, whatever that was, whatever involvement was, if she had any, was an accident. It was completely and entirely an accident, because she never had to go to second or third or fourth level answers. She had multiple plans. You're right, SoJo, but she didn't have to get to her plan B or C because her plan A had never been, it wasn't tested on everybody.
Without a doubt, they locked in on their plan A, Eva's plan B, that it was going to be Jordan that went down for this. To be blunt about it, they made that abundantly clear from the beginning of the interrogations.
I tell you what, I do that ring right there on the damn trash. That's exactly what I do with it.
I don't understand why either.
I let Jordan do it. That's 100% what I think.
Why would you think that?
Why would I not? Look what he's done. He's acted in this whole situation. I absolutely can tell he is not. Because who the freak? They call 911. Yeah, we need an ambulance out here.
He says I would take that ring and throw it in the trash, which I would say is highly unprofessional given the circumstances and the context of this conversation. I 100% believe Jordan did it. He's not Mr. Perfect. I mean, could you be any more obvious than that? He outright says, oh, I 100% think Jordan did it, and is bluntly talking shit about Jordan to Eva.
They do. And look, they don't ever waver from that. They don't ever ask questions in a manner in which, look, let's don't forget, again, it's important to keep the context in mind, though, that it is nearly impossible. This is the first police interview that Eva ever sat in. She was a convicted felon. So someone's asked her questions before, and those people had badges and uniforms, and most of them, some of them have been detectives. She had done this before. Jordan had not ever been in something like this, a room, cops accusing him of doing bad things. She didn't have to get beyond that top level, not even a little bit. That includes, towards the end of her interview.
She absolutely interrogated the Van Buren Police Department equally, if not more, than they interrogated her, hands down.
There are points where they have a good opportunity to get some good information from her. They actively pivot to Jordan, where she's telling him about her criminal history. I've been to prison. I've been to jail, X, Y, and Z, and I wouldn't go back for murder, which is a perfect opportunity to be like, what did you just say? And
This promise was says I never go back. And I damn sure wouldn't go back for murder.
Detective Perry follows that up with talking about pretty detailed, describing Olivia's head injury and how it had to be somebody hit her pretty hard. And she says, what's going to happen to me?
What happens to me?
She doesn't ask about Olivia at all. And then Detective Perry says, we're just going to keep investigating tonight and see what happens. And then Detective Perry says, I think there's something you're not telling me about Jordan.
There's nothing you're not telling me about him.
There's nothing to think of, to be honest with you. Which him? Wait a minute, which him? Jordan or
Jordan.
So she's sitting there being like, I would never go back for murder. And he's describing this horrible thing that happened to her daughter. And she's saying, what happens to me? And he's like, well, there's clearly something you're withholding from me about that guy.
You're 100% right, Chris. And we did that a lot because you get deep into it like we've done here, right? And then when you pull back out, you realize that she was saying this to them all day long. She was saying exactly the way Chris phrased it. I've been assaulted as a child. I'm not going back to prison. Jordan wouldn't hurt anybody. Maybe it happened like this. Maybe it happened like that. Am I in trouble? Do I need a lawyer? If you really back out of it and put together a checkbox, you'll see that the ones that she checked is legion. The amount of things that she said that, got no follow-up from them. That's not Eva Millard's fault, by the way. It's not Eva Millard's fault that towards the end of her interview, she is talking with former Crawford County Sheriff's Office Captain Patty Stroud, who I think must still be working on her report somewhere.
She must be.
Must be working on her report.
3 years late, 4 years.
4 years later.
She's a slow rat.
We still expect that discovery. As Patty is describing to Eva how there was a case one time with the father of a child accidentally harming that child by hugging it too much.
But I want you to listen to me. I've heard several of these, and I'd be happy to. This isn't like I'm trying to think of the words to explain it. It's not like something that you plan out and it just happens. It's just you're tired, you're wore out, there's things going on, and I've worked a bunch of these, and they tell me, I just wanted her to be quiet. I just needed her to be quiet. I just needed that. I worked a kid that was 17 years old, and he literally took the baby, and he was like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to make it stop crying, so I just squeezed it. And he broke bones all in its body because he just kept squeezing it. He wasn't doing it because he wanted to break bones. He was doing it because he just didn't know how to make it stop, and he freaked out. Do you get what I'm saying? It wasn't like, oh my God, I'm intentionally going to kill somebody. This was, oh my God, I hurt this baby. It was an accident. I just wanted it to be quiet. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. It happens all the time.
In laying the path for Eva to say the story, he was like, yeah, but that didn't happen. At the same time, or real close in there, Patty catches her and goes, wait, I thought you said you got real angry and irritated when you were coming down, when you were in withdrawals. She was like, yeah, I do.
I also find it highly prejudicial that Patty Stroud gave that version of events specifically towards a male. She could have just gave a version of events on how that happens in generalities. But she gave only one version, and that one version was for a man killing a child. From a comparing and contrasting standpoint, my favorite part of these interrogations is easily the fact that Jordan says, y'all are trying to put me in prison for something that I didn't do. And in contrast to that, Eva is talking about prison, and she says, I promised myself I would not go back to prison, and I damn sure wouldn't go back for murder.
The verbiage there.
It should set off alarm bells for you. The fact that she is asking, I'm not a parent, so I'm basing this off what Chad tells me about being a parent, and the fact that her kid is dead, and it's that same day, and she is asking about anything other than her kid, should be astonishing to the detectives, and they just miss it.
She also said it's not your kid on the table.
It's not your daughter that's on that table, it's mine.
I know.
So why would I tell?
She is clearly referencing her deceased 2-year-old daughter on an autopsy table. And I heard that and I was like, what the fuck? What a weird thing to say day one.
Look, Chris and I have had these talks, and Eva knew she was in the right place. Jordan volunteered to be there. Eva knew she was supposed to be in that room being spoken to by police. And she knew she wasn't going back to prison. She just never had to go to her plan B or plan C.
They did not allow it to be any other option but Jordan. Full stop. They did not care what the evidence was suggesting. They did not care what they were being told, what they heard. None of that. There was only going to be one option, and that one option was that Jordan did it, so much so that they literally warped evidence and everything they were told to try to make it fit a narrative that it did not fit.
100%. It happened throughout the day. A really good example of that, when Detective Perry brings in a bag of trash.
Oh God.
Right?
Yeah.
So if he knew something about them and showed them to you, then why would he tell me he didn't know nothing about them? Because we analyzed them and they're not puke, it's blood. It's 100% blood.
Can you show me?
Yeah, I'll show them to you. Hang tight. Okay. That's blood.
Whether or not something come into evidence is a trial question, and the jury can be told and the witness can be picked apart about how evidence is handled. Was that pretty shocking to see? Yes. But then Detective Perry, who has been told by Jordan about cleaning up Olivia the day before and a throw up, and she was sick. Now he's taking that information, he's going into Eva's room, and then he's got some wipes, and he's saying, but it's dark, and he and Eva get into this quite candidly, just odd conversation.
She's like, what about the note?
About the note, the trash, what's on it.
What was that?
The note? Anyway, that's beside the point. That's blood.
Look, cops can lie. We've established that. It's even an interrogation tactic that I like. I mean, it's preferable to most of them. But then we get into bad lying. And so there were some comments. I think we've had this tested. That is an amazingly quick forensic turnaround time of a substance on a wipe. We know that didn't happen. But also, so did Eva Millard. None of that was about Eva. It's like Chris said earlier. It was about she is a helpful person for them, they hope, to show that Jordan Shreeve killed Olivia. By like hour 2, they've figured out that that's going to be very difficult because he's innocent. By hour 3, it seems like they're nearly begging her to just go along with our bullshit. By hour 4, she's like, I ain't going back to prison. Not going back to prison. Do y'all understand that means I've been to prison before and that I'm not going back to prison? And
I essentially won't go back for a murder.
I don't go back.
Not a murder I didn't commit. I won't go back for a murder.
You know what she didn't say? And I'm not going to prison for the murder of my own child.
Because I didn't do it.
That I didn't do. Yeah.
That I didn't do.
I'm not going to prison for a murder I didn't commit. I'm not going to prison. Yeah, Jordan says, I'm not going to prison for something I didn't do. And she says, I'm not going to prison for murder.
I'm just telling you, I didn't do it, and I don't want to be convicted of something I didn't do. If I did it, I could understand taking the rap on it, but I didn't do it. You guys are going to convict me of something I didn't do.
Jordan, that baby did not die.
I understand that, but I didn't do it.
This promise was says I never go back. And I damn sure wouldn't go back for murder.
I'm not going to prison for murder. They're still trying to figure out how they can make her helpful to a narrative that they just need a third party to fill in a few details. And Patty Stroud just tells a story, happens to emphasize husband, father, squeezing, accident, hurt, child. They don't get her to be helpful with them either. Now, the reason for that is because Jordan didn't do a damn thing to Olivia SoJo. Secondary reason that Eva's not helpful with them, which I agree would have been her plan B or C, is she knows or believes incredibly strongly that she doesn't have to play their game and not be charged with murder. And guess what? We know that's how it turned out. She was right. That's a hell of a guess for someone who ain't going back to prison.
And for someone who they do not have footage of them transporting to the police department for their interrogation, someone whose interrogation started an hour after Jordan's did, so there is an hour missing of who Eva was with and what Eva was saying and what others were saying to Eva.
And who the police seem to be very familiar with. They know about her history with kids pretty early on. They know about, that they're not surprised when she says she's been to prison. So this to me suggests that they somewhat are familiar with who this person is. Also, it leads to them making very basic mistakes or missing things when she's talking about the wipes, and she's out there asking her, you know, about these or whatever they're saying to her. She told Detective Perry and she told Wooten on scene and the crew on scene that she's running around with Olivia in her hands.
I touched her because when I touched her, I knew something was wrong with her. But I started freaking out when I picked her up. I had her right here. She had stuff coming out of her mouth under my shirt. And I told him I noticed the stuff on my shoulder, so I thought she might be choking. And then stuff started coming out of her mouth. I said, where did the blood come from? Where is it coming from? Because I didn't know. I was walking towards the bedroom and I realized this on my shoulder. It was a dark shirt, so I didn't know if it was slobber or blood or something. And that's when I noticed the blood or something, period. So flip her over, and that's whenever she started bleeding out the mouth or drooling or whatever onto the couch. And then but I was trying to pat her chest, and at first I was trying to give her CPR. I didn't know how to do it. And I was patting her back, like trying to choke her or whatever.
And Olivia is bleeding, and she does not have a drop of blood anywhere on her. And you have wet wipes with blood on them in the trash. And no one ever asks. I don't know where the wet wipes came from, but nobody ever asks her, did you wipe up the blood on your hands, on your arms, on your neck? Did you clean up the blood? Because there's wet wipes in the trash with blood on them, and you don't have any blood on you, and that doesn't fit with your story. And they never even get close to asking her about that.
They didn't ask her, did you take a shower?
She looks freshly showered.
She has her hair back in a ponytail, and she looks fresh.
I know we're talking
and she
about
has no shoes on.
And I know we're talking about the alleged interrogation, but you can see in the MVR footage for someone who, quote, by the way, I woke up when Jordan got home, which was around 12:10, 12:15, in that range, 12:10 to 12:20 on November the 8th. And that's when I found Olivia.
I went back to sleep. And Jordan nudged me and told me he was leaving. And I think I smoked a cigarette in bed. I'm not for sure if I did or if I didn't. But I went back to sleep. And when he got home, again, I just had Billy in the truck. That's when I seen it.
They knew in the interview rooms, they knew that day that that was false.
On page 8 of Jordan's interrogation transcript, he clearly states that Eva wanted him to come home, that she prompted him to come home before taking Billy Freeman home.
Before they ever start talking to her.
Right, and then he says it again when he's talking to Pam.
About the pills.
Yeah.
And then you just came home.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I was supposed to bring his food stamp card. I left my wallet. So I was like, well, we'll just have to go back and get your food stamp card, after we get these. It worked out because my lady wanted me to come home and bring her some, so she felt better before I dropped him off anyways, and I left the card at home. I came in the house, grabbed my wallet, because I had the CBT card there. That's the only reason we came back. I came back, grabbed that, plus Eva wanted me to come in here and drop the pills off also.
She just ran circles around investigators. When they're talking to her and she is saying that she was asleep all morning and she did not wake up until Jordan got home, they have hard evidence. They have text message proof. Text messages that Eva herself admitted that she sent that morning that proves that she was very much awake. And not only to Jordan, they ask her, have you talked to Jose? And she says, no, psych, just kidding. I actually texted him this morning as well.
Who's the baby of Olivia?
Yeah.
Or the daddy of Olivia?
Jose. I haven't even got a chance to call him.
Have you talked to Jose lately?
I talked to him yesterday.
About what?
I'm being sick.
Have you texted him since yesterday?
Actually, I had to send him a text this morning. I got on Facebook and I seen an old memory of us in the hospital with Olivia. I've seen pictures of her and him. That was as soon as I opened my eyes. I checked my Facebook, smoking a cigarette. That was I woke up and I texted Jordan and asked him where he was at. And right after I done that, I fell back to sleep.
You go back to sleep.
Sure. And then not too long after that, I think Jordan came in. No. That was all whenever he left. Yeah, I got
Well,
up.
I say, when you said you were up the whole time.
No, sir, I was not.
What time he left?
I got up and I went to the restroom because my stomach was hurting.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was so on my phone asking where I was at, but he said he'd be home in 30 minutes. Okay, I fell back asleep. And then that's the last thing I remember until he came in the door. And he woke me up standing beside me.
You were actually awake at least an hour before he came home.
And they don't
Based on text.
They don't even have to believe Jordan because they have his phone. He gave them his phone so they can go see the text and what time it was sent. So even if they think Jordan is full of shit, they still know for a fact that it was sent way before he got home.
And they know what it said.
Yeah, and they know exactly what it said. And they think that's completely normal. And they never call her out on it. Like you said, they never say, you said you were asleep till he got home. And this text proves that that's a lie. Explain it.
And she sent some interesting attachments to those text messages.
Yeah.
And the fact that she also texted Jose SoJo that morning, I think is really
out of the blue.
Interesting.
Out of the blue. And Jose later on doesn't make it seem like they were on great terms. And out of the blue, she feels the need to send these texts.
I have two issues with these interrogations as they apply to Jose SoJo. The first one being that they did not do a death notification to the SoJo family. The 911 call goes in around 12:15 in the afternoon. Of course, police arrive on the scene, first responders arrive, the coroner arrives, she's pronounced dead. They take Eva and Jordan to the police department to do their interrogations. They pick up Billy Freeman. They call Pam. Deb knows about it. The news is outside the house. And yet, no one bothered to do a death notification to the SoJo family the entire time. Eva even asked Detective Perry if they have notified Jose yet, to which Detective Perry responds, "Well, I don't know, Jose."
Have y'all told Jose?
Do what?
Have y'all told Jose?
No.
Why?
I don't know, Jose.
Can I tell him?
Which, what the fuck? Doesn't matter.
Right.
Buren is a small place.
Yeah, like y'all got to go do the death notification regardless. And then on top of that,
my second issue with the interrogations as they apply to Jose SoJo is that, in my personal opinion, it looks like Eva was getting off on the idea of being the one to get to tell Jose that his daughter died. She is very hyper fixated on wanting to be the one that's able to tell him that. And in my personal opinion, it doesn't appear that she wants to be the one to tell him out of a genuine, heartfelt concern. It seems to me like the best way to explain it is that it seems like she was getting off on the idea of being the one to tell him. She really wanted to be the one to call and tell him, and she gets almost excited, it appears to me, to be able to have the opportunity to do that. And it not only gets brought up between Eva and Detective Perry, but it gets brought up again between Eva and Patty Stroud when Patty Stroud brings Eva her phone to call Connie on.
Can you go home? That's what you want to do? Can you go home? I think we need to tell Jose. Where's it, Baldwin? Don't call him over the phone and tell him that. He deserves to be told in person. It's not a phone call kind of conversation. Well, can I go? So I can tell you?
It's almost like she's worried what Jose will say to somebody else if they tell him that Olivia died while she was in Eva's care. And she wants to be first because she needs to control the narrative and lead with, I didn't do it.
And I think controlling the narrative describes it. She's been successful in most of the things she's done, I guess, albeit the time she went to prison that she ain't going back for. But if she can control the narrative, she may see this thing out. She may weather the storm, or whatever the saying you want to use, but she was absolutely afraid of what the response was going to be from Jose and his parents, I think.
And it's similar to probably what, I don't know exactly what Connie said to her, but similar to her phone call with Connie, where she calls and tells her about it. And one of the first things she does is make it say, hey, I didn't do it, just to be clear.
But I didn't. Mom, I didn't. When I woke up, I thought she tried to climb out of her.
And that's, that's weird that you need to clarify that you're not the person that killed this kid.
Over and over and over again.
To everybody, to everyone you talk to, you have to make sure that they know that you didn't do it, because something in your brain is saying that everyone's going to suspect you, and you got to make it real clear.
And it seems like a response to me. The way she says it to Connie, to me, sounds like Connie asked her something along those lines, and that was Eva's response to Connie on the phone to whatever it was that she said or asked her.
I didn't hurt Olivia, Mom. I don't know what happened. They said one of us done it, and I didn't. And Mom, I want you to know that I did not hurt her. I didn't.
It's obviously weird, but it's also weird that every other person who interacts with Eva Millard seems to be like, if a kid dies in her custody, she is suspect number one. And the Van Buren Police Department is like, do you think Jordan Shreeve did this? How did Jordan Shreeve do this? Tell us how he did it, because clearly you didn't.
Another issue with these interrogations is that if you're going to be judgmental, which you should not be, but if you're going to be judgmental, you should be judgmental fairly.
Be judgmental towards everybody in that house.
Yeah, do it
Yeah.
first.
With Jordan, they latch on to the fact that he's an addict, but then we don't give two shits.
She lied about it, circles back and says, oh yeah, I did do it. And
Just going to breeze over the fact that she's doing drugs. We're going to cruise right on over the lies, right on over the drug use. We're going to cruise right on over everything, but we're going to latch onto a fucking EBT card.
That he was telling the truth about.
then he was telling the truth
That he
about
was telling the complete truth about. It's just a complete double standard between, it's not even, like Chad has said, it's not two interrogations. They interrogate Jordan and they just try to get information from Eva to use against Jordan, because they're not really ever asking her hard-hitting questions. And when they get close enough, they don't follow up. They don't pin her down. And like you said, they're not equally tough on both of them. And you should be, in my opinion, the fairest way to do it is to get everybody in that house, Jordan, Jim, Eva, into 3 separate rooms, and to be just a hard ass on all 3 of them, because there's a dead 2-year-old and one of them knows, and nobody's leaving until we figure out what happened.
And let's keep in mind that there was no interview of James Shreeve.
No.
There wasn't one done. Not only there's no footage exist from that day, there's not even a report that actually goes into any detail from a detective who said, I asked him any questions. There's some references to statement he made to officers, which corroborated things that Jordan said, but they never interviewed the third person that lived in the house.
They had an entire disregard for Jim through and through. He's on the crime scene. Who cares? We'll leave him in the garage. Well, maybe we'll put him in the police cruiser. Then we don't know where he is, and we leave him on the scene. I mean, just a complete and total disregard for Jim. Then they head back to the police department, knowing he uses a wheelchair, knowing he's on an oxygen tank, and they don't ask him, are you going to be okay here by yourself? Do you need assistance? None of that. All that to say this, they absolutely should have talked with Jim Shreeve, if for nothing more than just what he may or may not have seen or overheard that day. They absolutely should have. But if you're going to play fair...
Hold on, I gotta interrupt you. Play fair, screw play fair. Play as hard and fast as you can inside of the constitutional rules to figure out who the fuck killed a 2-year-old child.
Yeah.
I don't want you to play fair. I have 2 girls, ages 6 and ages 2 now. I don't want cops to be fair. I want them to get it right. Now, do people get it wrong? Sure. Have I gotten it wrong? Yes. But play hard. And if it's not necessarily fair, but it's constitutional, you're not going to see me file a motion in a different case about it.
Well, in a nice bubbly world here, because no shit, they should have talked to all 3 adults on the scene that day, but just in a nice perfect world, even if they did not think that Jim did it, or they didn't think that Jim was capable of doing it, any of which could be implied
By the fact that Jim did not care, then he was there.
then you should probably be asking him questions like, are you okay? Are you okay to be left here alone? Can I get you anything? Is your oxygen tank full? Do you need your wheelchair? Have you eaten today? Do you need medical assistance? But they just had complete and total disregard for him being there whatsoever at all.
It's nothing.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. As an officer, let's say there was suspicious death at a nursing home. There are going to be a lot of people that can't be moved around. And so, but you would know that, right, in your report. And so on that day, the fact that we don't have video showing how frail James Shreeve was that day, the fact that no one took photographs of James Shreeve, it doesn't matter why they even would want photographs, but
They want photographs of his room.
we want to document the fact that you do or do not have blood on you. Fair, in SoJo's words. But also to make certain that when somebody like me and somebody like Chris come asking questions about the person that we know was either back in the house or allowed to stay in the house or maybe in the house or maybe out of the house, we know that they at least documented enough to show, look how frail he is. We have pictures, we have video. We had our officer turn his body mic on and stay on scene and ask him some questions. I texted some to him, right? You do all those things. But we have nothing of Jim Shreeve.
We have nothing of any of them. They didn't document Jim Shreeve, Jordan, or Eva's hands, feet, clothes, none of that. There is no photographs, to my knowledge whatsoever, that was done that day for anybody that was on the scene. Or at least I haven't seen it.
None were ever turned over, certainly. What they do or don't have, you have to remember, I don't know, and I don't know what I believe anymore because of things we've seen and heard, leading up to June 28th. But they did have Eva and Jordan in a room that had audio and video, and they, at least, Jordan, they asked to see his feet. I don't think they asked Eva any of those questions.
They don't ask her any of that. They don't ask her, why are you not wearing shoes? Where are your shoes? Why aren't you dressed appropriately for November in Arkansas? Because it was 50 degrees outside, and me being me, yes, I looked up the temperature for that day in the almanac records. But they don't ask anything about any of that to Eva Millard.
They ask her at the very end. Detective Perry says, have you got shoes? And she says no. Detective Perry follows up with, do you think this is going away?
You got shoes?
No.
Do you think this is going to go away?
No.
So he doesn't even follow up with, where are they? Why don't you have them on? What happened to them?
None of those questions. I mean, I guess, this is right before he gives her a ride home.
Yes, he asked it because she's about to leave.
Because
He doesn't
she's
ask
about to
it if he made a discovery that might be relevant to the case.
I mean, Billy Freeman got told to find his own way home.
Well, he thought it was relevant enough to ask Jordan to see the bottom of his shoes
Exactly.
hours before he asked her where hers are before she's leaving on the way out the door. So he clearly thought they were relevant beforehand, just not as it applied to her.
Let me see the bottom of your feet. Okay.
They're not interrogating.
He knew that it was relevant or could be relevant on November the 8th. He knew that it was or could be, and that's the standard. Because you don't know yet. You haven't had an autopsy.
He knew enough to ask to see Jordan's shoes.
That's right.
And if he didn't think it was relevant, he wouldn't have asked. And Jordan even says to him about the wipes, something like, I don't know where those came from. I cleaned up puke. Maybe she was cleaning up.
That doesn't make sense.
I'm just asking.
Did she clean something up there first? They got there. I don't know.
And then Detective Perry, a couple minutes later, turns that into maybe y'all were cleaning up before we got there.
Maybe, I don't know, I was thinking maybe the blood got on the floor and y'all were just trying to clean it up real quick.
No.
Just to clean up, Mirage.
And Jordan's the one who offers that up. Says, I don't know. Maybe she was cleaning up some because he doesn't know. He doesn't mention it, but it should be obvious to Detective Perry at that point. There's no blood on her hands. I asked to see his shoes. He didn't have blood on them. She doesn't have shoes on.
Why doesn't she have shoes on then? And what did she do with
Well,
it?
yeah, he absolutely should have asked where the shoes were, no doubt.
Candidly, forget the full intent behind his question, right? Which is very early in a murder investigation. But he wanted to see the bottom of Jordan's shoes, but he didn't care to ask where Eva's shoes were. Let's go find them, or tell me what room they're in. What shoes did you have on? What were you wearing?
They drill Billy Freeman about what Jordan was wearing. Did Billy see Jordan change clothes?
Eva tells him that she changed clothes.
I was walking towards the bedroom and I realized this on my shoulder.
Did you change shirt?
Yes, it did.
Where's that shirt at?
In my bedroom floor, I think. And it was a slobber or it was a dark shirt, so I didn't.
And they
Yeah.
don't follow up on it.
Checkbox. She does it again.
Yeah,
Checkbox.
she tells him.
Oh yeah, I changed clothes.
They say, "Is that the shirt you were wearing?" And she says, "No, I changed it." And they don't follow up on it at all. They're not like, "That's a really weird thing to do when you find your kid laying on the floor and you think they're dead and you're running around panicking. You had the presence of mind to change your t-shirt."
Yeah, so she flat out tells them that she changed clothes, and then somehow, some way, they take that information and then they try to apply it to Jordan, and they're asking Billy, did he change clothes? Was he wearing something different? It's like Eva and Perry just bounce ideas off of each other, and then they try to twist those ideas and somehow make them apply to Jordan that they don't apply to in any which way, shape, or form.
Anything Eva did or said in the detective's minds is them. It's Jordan and Eva. And Jordan doesn't get that benefit. What he did, it gets applied to him. They ignore it. And so they say, were you wearing the same clothes? Did you change your clothes? Blah, blah. And I think he had maybe more different clothes the night before. And he told them that he thought he was wearing the same clothes, or he had gotten up early that morning and put on clothes in the dark. So he didn't know or something. And they tried to hold that against him. And yeah, Eva just comes out and says it. Yeah, I changed clothes. And I threw the shirt on the ground and, whatever. Nothing.
But back to what Daniel Perry did ask, and we asked it to, think about that question y'all were talking about earlier about, have you ever done anything like this before? Did he ask Jordan that question?
Nope.
No. Because
There's
he
not
knew
They knew the answer.
the answer.
The first thing they did was look at both of their histories. I don't think they're that.
I mean,
confident.
surely you.
Surely the first thing they did was look at both.
Of course they did.
I mean, I would hope so, but at this point, shit, I don't know anymore. But
A crucial moment is when Eva asked Perry, do you think he did it because of the blood on the couch? And Perry responds, no, I think the blood on the couch is from you taking her in there.
So wait a minute, you think you took her to the living room and killed her?
I don't know.
Is that because of the blood on the couch?
No, I'm thinking the blood on the couch was from you taking her in there.
That was me.
They're basing that on Eva saying that she took her in there, which again, they're basing everything that happened in that house before they got there on what Eva says happened. And they're just taking it as fact and going with it.
The reason why this is so critical is because if you take Eva's version of events, that she found Olivia in the pack and play, she yells for Jordan, Jordan calls 911, she then picks up Olivia and starts running around with her, and then she tells one version that she was trying to unchoke her and do CPR on her and all of these different things, and that's how the blood got on the couch. If you think about that in the way that she told it, and you think about what Jordan said about the blood being on the couch.
I didn't pick her up, but she didn't look stiff to me. I'm telling you the truth. I'm not lying.
You just see any blood?
Yes, I seen blood at the couch. At the couch when we got there.
And you thought, okay.
If you even semi want to believe Eva's version of events, whether it be the original one that she told, that she was the one running around with Olivia holding her, she's the one that tried to do CPR, she's the one that tried to unchoke her, or if you want to believe her other version of events where at some point in time Jordan was the one trying to unchoke her, which we know is not true, but either way is neither here nor there. If you take either version of Eva's story and you think about it in the timeline, she finds her, she screams, she yells for Jordan, Jordan calls 911, she takes off running with her. If the blood is on the couch When Jordan approaches the couch, it's already there. Then the blood had already been on the couch, meaning that her entire version, whichever one you want to believe, is false. She had already transferred the blood to the couch before Jordan ever got home.
100%.
And that's a huge piece that you absolutely should not be blowing over, because if he goes back to the bathroom, she finds her in the crib, she picks her up, she starts running around, he calls 911. He then goes to approach her after calling 911 the first time to see what's wrong with her and take her pulse. He walks up to her, there's blood already on the couch. Then it does not matter which version of her events she wants to tell. The blood was on the couch, and Olivia was dead before Jordan ever got back to 2210 Granite Circle on November 8th, 2018.
Or whenever they first bring her phone, I mean, let's don't forget where that phone was, at least where it was in some photographs. And there it is in her hands, being used to call Connie, and then she later leaves with it.
And they don't test it to see if there is blood, which it might, if there's blood on it, that's not bad for her. That makes sense. That fits. It doesn't incriminate her that there would be blood on the phone because she's carrying. Yeah,
wouldn't bother me. Yeah,
it's not incriminating at all, which is again why it makes no sense for her to have the presence of mind to clean it.
If she had had blood on her hands, her face, her neck, her shirt, none of that would have bothered me, because if you're panicked and you're trying to save someone and they're bleeding, you're going to get blood on you. That makes perfectly rational and logical sense and doesn't mean anything bad at all.
And we're dealing with two people, and one of them has told us nothing but the truth, and we've confirmed that. They've told us nothing but the truth, and the other person has already told us a few lies, and we're just going to keep believing the person who's already lied to us. And we're going to ignore what Jordan has said.
We're going to do that even when we go back to the bad lie interrogation technique, which is to tell Eva and to tell Jordan, why are you so calm on that 911 call when you can hear Eva Millard when Jordan calls 911? And of the two who is showing emotional highs and lows, Jordan clearly, in that short phone call right before he calls back, doesn't know what the hell is going on.
Crawford County 911.
Hey, all right, hey. Let me call you right back.
And Eva is very calm in the background. Now, she's told cops, they have this audio on November the 8th. So I was running around, I was screaming. She's told them all kinds of shit that day. Hysterical was always the picture she painted. Well, when Jordan calls 911,
the
first time, it's not there. Doesn't exist. Jordan's trying to figure it out, hang up, call back. It is almost, Chris and I did, it was probably a drunken timing sequence issue that we like to do with numbers, but
it's a good chance.
There's a high probability.
Good chance.
Yes. She becomes theatrically hysterical for the purposes of that second phone call. She waits until she can hear Jordan say something to someone, but she's picked up a second, maybe a second and a half before she realizes she's going to be picked up. And she is calm in the background. And then she gets just nonsensical screaming.
Crawford County 911.
Hey, can we have a ambulance sent to 2210 Granite Circle?
2210 Granite Circle in Van Buren.
I don't know. Hold on. 22 Granite Circle in Van Buren, Arkansas.
All right, give me one moment. Let me get your Van Buren.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
She's not confronted with any of that on November the 8th.
She wasn't confronted about anything.
Well, she could have at least been politely asked like she was the rest of the stuff, and then her answers ignored. That seems fair.
Yeah, that does seem fair.
She did say, I ain't going back to prison for a murder, but she said I wouldn't hurt my kid. She is pregnant and drugs. But Eva said all day long, I don't hurt my kids. I didn't hurt my kid. Versions of that. She's just looking for her next fix, and she's pregnant. Seems like that's harming your damn child.
Yeah.
And they know she has a history or a record of it because they ask her about it.
Pam is the person who pointed that out on video, and she was allowed in the interview room, and she chewed Jordan's ass over Eva Millard. And she's the only person.
So what Pam said, and another record of it, she says she wouldn't do it, so we'll just take her at her word.
Well, we know that they're obviously watching Jordan and Pam talk from outside.
Yeah.
So they heard all about the allegations of abuse. They heard about Eva brutally whipping Peyton with a leather belt. They heard about all of that. Did they make a phone call to try to substantiate that and see if it was true, if there was anything else that they needed to know about?
No, they didn't.
And there's somebody that they could have reached out to and would have provided them with a lot of good information, who we've already talked about, that they didn't, and that's Jose. You don't talk to the dad and say, what was Eva's relationship like with Olivia? How does she treat her? Did Olivia seem to like going over there? Was Olivia happy when she came back? Did you ever notice any bruises on her? The fact that they don't bring Jose in that day and talk to him the same day and try to get that information, again, you can only be so incompetent.
And Jose's parents.
And Jose's parents. His parents, who also looked after her a bunch. And they don't bring in Deb and ask her. They don't bring in everybody who's ever seen this kid and be like, did you ever notice when she was around a particular individual, she didn't like him? She didn't want to be around him. She was crying. She came back bruised more often than not. None of that.
November the 8th, 2018 was a Thursday. Do either of you know where they'd been the previous Sunday?
At her
The birthday party?
Yeah, with Jose and his parents. Eva and Jose's mother got into an argument at that kid's birthday party. Eva went and got in the damn truck. You want to know what Jordan Shreeve did? He stuck around.
He stayed at the birthday party.
Stayed at the birthday party.
Girl.
Fuck yeah.
Is that the last time they saw?
Fucking Angelica was giving me goddamn birthday cake. I was so pissed I walked out. Go get my fucking kid right now, I told Jordan. He looked at me like, I just said in passing. I was out. I got in the truck, and here comes this little bitch with a plate of birthday cake.
Who was it, that girl?
Fucking Brady. and then I'm like, I'm scowling, I swear, and I was fucking giving her the stank eye. She's talking to Jordan.
Oh, she was.
Pissed. Here, Angelica told me to give you this, and then, like, out of nowhere, I'm looking at them, and then Jose's like, right here. I didn't even see him. I was holding Olivia. Oh, I was pissed. Jose said, what's wrong? Why are you mad?
Then he helped her clean up, and then he loaded the truck.
And he brought Olivia presents. Eva didn't bring shit.
He brought and bought.
Yeah, bought him. Of course, Eva didn't buy him.
Well, she didn't have a job, so there was no way she could have. If we're being frank and honest about that, then let's just be honest. But
another issue for me is that during Jordan's interrogation, Detective Marsh tells Jordan that people are going to see this interrogation and know that he was not remorseful.
If you did anything to Olivia, the autopsy will show that.
Yes, I understand.
Okay? So now we're at the point now that if you did something, okay, this whole interview, okay, is going to show that you have no remorse for it or anything like that. That we give you the opportunity to talk about it, and you said nothing happened. I'm not saying you did it.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm saying if you did, okay, this whole interview is going to be showing that you have no remorse and all you care about is if you got away with it.
Yes, I
Would you agree with that?
Yes, I did nothing to that child. And I don't know what happened to her. I don't know, and I didn't do nothing.
They're gauging Jordan's behavior and claiming that it's going to somehow show that he was unremorseful, which I couldn't disagree more. Meanwhile, we aren't having a care in the world about the fact that Eva changed clothes, the fact that we've caught her in numerous lies, the fact that she is doing drugs while she's pregnant, the fact that she's changed her story 1,000,001 times. We don't care about any of that. Apparently none of that. Not even accusations of prior abuse against children is relevant to these fucking people whatsoever at all. But Jordan is the one acting weird. Yeah, okay.
It's not weird that she said, I'm not going to prison for murder.
oh yeah, that's the weirdest thing I've ever fucking heard.
It's not weird that she changed clothes. It's not weird that she changed Olivia. We also didn't bring in first responders and interviewed them. Those rooms aren't just for suspects. They're for maintaining the integrity of an investigation and an interrogation or interview or whatever you want to call it. We didn't bring in the EMS drivers, the ones that went through the door. We didn't get the fire department guys in here. We didn't bring in those people and have them sit in a room for 5 minutes and ask them what they saw and what they heard. We didn't ask them any of those questions.
And the officers on the scene, allegedly, did not have body cams. So we have no idea. We have no visual representation, whether that be photograph or video or audio, that documented what happened on the scene that day with police, first responders, EMS, the coroners, the prosecutors that were on the scene. That's just all out in the open. It does not exist.
And they don't talk to a single neighbor.
Not one.
And see if anybody saw it. Maybe they don't see anything. Maybe everyone was gone or in their house or whatever, but they don't even make that basic effort to walk around the neighborhood and knock and say, did anybody see anything? That's the frustrating part. It's not a difficult job to do, to walk around the neighborhood and ask, did you see anything?
It's unbelievable. We did not even see the bare fucking minimum done in this case, and it is absolutely an injustice to Olivia SoJo. Do we want to get into the fact that Eva Millard took not one, not two, but 3 of these quote-unquote lie detector tests?
Was it 3 or 6? I don't remember. I think
that's not a good result. Let's try again.
Well,
Did you answer it like this? Would you like us to change any questions?
There's
Or you don't like?
a reason that one that the world will never see could show that you're deceptive. Look, I have no idea. That was kind of insane.
I'm going to give you a third chart, and here's why. I'm going to explain why. Just to be fair to you.
What does that mean?
Well, hang on, I'm going to explain it. No, I'm not saying that just yet, but to be fair to you, when you took that test, you said you were going, yeah, no, instead of a true yes, no. Mm-hmm. Yes, no. You were very quickly, and I think you were trying to manipulate the test.
No.
But, hang on. It's all good. It's all good.
Just answering the questions.
But that can affect it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to
You're really freaking me out.
Oh, you're okay. You're okay. What I want you to do though is just calmly, normally answer it. Don't listen. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
Get it harder.
Okay. Listen. Here's what I want you to do. We're going to go through the test again when you're ready. And I want you to just clearly say yes or no. Okay? None of the yes, no, yeah, no. Okay, because that could affect the test. All right?
No, did it?
I believe it did. So let's just do it again. And are you good with going ahead and doing it again and answering just normally yes, no?
Did it? How bad did it affect the test? Did it?
I think it affected the test.
So how many did I get wrong?
Well, let's don't worry about that. Let's just go ahead and take the test again, and I want you to answer in a normal voice. Okay?
Asking super politely, apologizing about results and questions on any sort of polygraph or voice stress or whatever, is a really odd thing.
Yes, let's take it again. Are there any questions that you would like us to change? And don't worry, we are never going to ask you if you killed your daughter intentionally or unintentionally. Oh, hey, and by the way, can we take it again? Because you didn't answer that one the way that I wanted you to answer it. So can we redo that? And let me tell you how to redo it so that we can get the results that we want.
I'm like, holy shit.
And they ask her, the closest they get is they ask her, did you see Olivia get killed?
Did you see Olivia get killed?
No.
That's the hardest hitting question that they ask her. And then they say that she failed that, and it's a bullshit test, and who knows if she failed it. But if you're a detective and you ask someone, did you see this person get killed? And they fail that question, and you don't follow up with, did you kill this person? Even to rule it out, that is far beyond incompetence.
You don't realize that we have spent an entire podcast, SoJo has spent, I don't know how many hours untold on the amazing social media accounts that you run and generate, produce, direct. But we are hammering home the point that they never asked her if she killed her.
Never.
They asked her twice at trial.
It's why the interview of Eva Millard was a charade.
I think calling it an interview, much less an interrogation, is incredibly generous.
She chose not to be helpful to them.
Why did Patty Stroud get involved with this? She's not with the Van Buren Police Department. She's with the sheriff's office. I'm sure the Van Buren Police Department had a female that could have been in on the interviews if that was the real concern. So why Patty Stroud? Why did they get her involved?
She appeared out of the ether, is that what they call it? Appeared out of the
Is it ether?
ether, whatever, and then returned to that.
And
They just went to a little box and sat there, and they came out because she's not on the crime scene logs. She didn't write a report. If you look at the paper on this, Patty Stroud was not involved, and Patty Stroud was very involved.
Patty Stroud was very adamant that she didn't write a report. Well, she's in the interview. She went in and asked questions. It's impossible to hide that fact unless you edit another video. Well, listen. By the way, we all know my thoughts on this. My guess is if you find the last question Patty Stroud asked and then read the rest of it, there must have been something they thought originally they really wanted to keep in there, or we probably wouldn't have ever seen the fact that she was in there asking questions, trying to lead Eva into a story about a man who hugged his baby too hard. We don't know, because it is highly unusual for another law enforcement agency inside of a city like this to have anybody in the interview room. My best guess has always been that Billy Freeman's house was in between the Crawford County Sheriff's Office and the Van Buren PD. We don't have other cops that were out on November the 8th at the Freeman house. Where, by the way, I know we're talking about the interviews, but there were 2 other interviews done that day, among others that were never recorded, never audio or video, which is fine. You have to remember, 50 years ago, you wouldn't have had any of this. You just had to rely on an officer's report and his field notes. But Joyce Freeman was interviewed by Crawford County Sheriff's deputies in her front yard on Shibley Road, along with Billy Freeman, who was separated by the Crawford County deputies and interviewed there. And then Billy was further taken to the Van Buren Police Department. Now, Joyce passed away not that long after November the 8th, 2018, but there's no report of what Joyce Freeman said that day to officers while standing in her front yard. So while not recorded, there's an interview that was probably, like every damn thing else in this case, very helpful to the truth, to Jordan's innocence, and to maybe actually prosecuting or trying to prosecute the person who killed Olivia. There's an interview. It's awful.
There is no doubt that things that would benefit Jordan and prove his innocence go missing, but we'll get into that later. Another thing to note with Patty Stroud is that Patty is who is in the room with Eva when Eva calls Connie at the end of her interrogation. Patty didn't have to sit in that room with Eva. She could have overheard the entire phone call and watched it from the security cameras. But she wanted to stay in the room with Eva while she was on the phone with Connie, and she basically coached her on what to say and kept chiming in on, don't leave this out, make sure to say this. It was as if they didn't want Eva to call Connie without a babysitter.
Interesting thing. Look, she sticks around and does some things on November the 9th, maybe the 10th, 11th, and 12th through the 18th. It gets more blurry in there from a later podcast sequence of events, even for the 3 of us. But then she comes back out of the ether, what is it, somewhere around August of 2020?
Yep. Some very, very briefly to, again, play a pretty key role, and then disappears again, writes no report about it, again, doesn't say anything about it, then disappears again, and has a lot of conveniently timed travel plans.
How is it possible for someone to just completely get out of even having to write a report for a homicide investigation, a child homicide investigation, no less?
Good question. I mean, what are they going to do? Beat you if you don't write a report?
I mean, you clearly FOIA'd it, so you would think that they would at least be trying to write one after the fact to have one to provide you. Hell, I don't know, a note? To me, it's a liability issue, which clearly they don't seem to be too concerned with. And they've showed that through and through with this investigation. They showed that with Jim. They allegedly placed him in a cop cruiser. There is no audio or video footage of that. They left him on the scene unattended without making sure that he'd be okay left on the scene. And especially with Eva. If I'm a male officer, no way in hell am I transporting a female without the cameras on. Absolutely not. That is a huge liability issue.
So then why didn't she write a report? You just answered your question. Think backwards.
I'm thinking.
Her writing a report is a
Liability issue.
And how could such a thing be?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out later. I think everybody is on the same page about why we think that, where that's leading.
I don't have many regrets I have hardly any regrets about the case. And I don't know if Chad does.
Regrets.
Yeah, no, that's a better way of putting it. One of them is that we never got to ask Patty Stroud questions under oath. But it worked out well for Jordan, so I'm not, and that wouldn't have helped him necessarily. But I would have liked to ask her some things about her involvement.
I think that's it for interrogations. What do y'all think?
That's fine by me. I could eat. I could eat dinner.
Yeah, I could eat.
This guy survives on cans of beans and tortilla chips.
I mean, I eat this
Cheese
for
dip.
dinner. This is mine.
I mean, you're preaching to her choir. I've seen him survive on tortilla chips and cheese dip for the same time.
That's literally me. That's literally me.